Live from London, it's Plank of the Week with Mike Graham.
Good evening and welcome to Friday night on TalkTV. It's me, Mike Graham, and of course it's Plank of the Week, and this is the place where we judge everybody and all the things that they've done this week and decide who has been the most plankish. And it's a hell of a week, I tell you. We've got a big list of people to get through, and we've got a fantastic panel to help us. Richard Tice is here from the Reform Party, but also TalkTV presenter. Esther Krakue is back. Mark Saggers from Sunday Night and The Sporting Show, and Georgie Frost, who's got great advice if you need any advice at all on what to do with your money, if you've managed to keep any. You've got any left. Here we are. Plank of the Week is what we're fighting for, and we're going to kick off with Richard Tice, one of the greatest stories of all time.
I mean, this is unbelievable. Coots Bank is my first nomination this week. I mean, this was sort of the golden bank, the royal bank. They've absolutely trashed their reputation because my good friend Nigel Farage, he put in what's called a subject access request, which anybody can do to your bank to find out what information they're keeping on you.
Right.
And Coots Bank, on literally the 11th hour of the 30th day, they gave Nigel the document, 40 pages long, which included just an absolute catalogue of allegations, frankly, some of which are nothing short of libelous.
As he said, it was like a dossier on some kind of criminal mastermind.
Literally, I mean, it was just unreal that it was sort of, he's xenophobic, he's racist, his views would upset people, he's not inclusive, as though these are sort of requirements to hold a bank
account. One of the most amazing things that they seem to find unnatural, that was he was friends with Novak Djokovic, right? And also friends with Donald Trump, the elected president of the United States of America. I mean, sorry, I didn't realise that was some kind of thought crime.
Utterly appalling. But the real point was that these documents proved that Coots Bank had lied, not once, but twice. Because they said... They actually told the BBC...
This is, by the way, after they took away his bank account.
They took away his bank account. They said that they inferred to the BBC that he didn't have enough wealth to justify a Coots account. That didn't go very well. When it actually transpired, within this document was the minutes of a meeting from the Risk Management Wealth Committee as to how they could exit Nigel after he'd repaid the end of his mortgage. So this whole thing was considered and planned. And that, basically it was nothing to do with his wealth. They actually said in the documents that commercially he was a valued customer. But basically they needed to find a way to exit him.
I know.
Why? Get him out.
Why? Just because
let's have a look. Let's get the explanation from Nigel himself.
It was done because somehow I don't fit with their values. They were bailed out by us. They have a duty to run at a profit as a commercial business. But no, they are to be the moral guardians of all. And that's because the march through the public and private corporate sectors of left-wing institutions who want to change the way the world is, organisations like Stonewall, has led us exactly to where we are.
Now, you wouldn't have thought left-wing institutions would include Coots Bank, would you?
You really wouldn't. And here's the thing. I suspect the majority of Coots Bank customers agree with Nigel on many issues, whether it be Brexit, whether it be how to run the country, how to control our borders, all these key important things that matter to people. So I think Coots have I actually think they've damaged their reputation. They've therefore damaged shareholder value. We, of course, as taxpayers,
we own
about 39% of it. So frankly, on that basis, I think heads should roll. I've called for heads to roll this week. I think they should publicly apologise to Nigel. And I'm saying, actually, anybody who's got a NatWest account, because NatWest owns Coots Bank, they also should be saying to their NatWest branch, well, what information have you got on me? And why are you telling me what I should or shouldn't think, what I should or should not say? What business has it got to do with you?
I mean, originally when this case came out, what we were hearing was that because Nigel was a politically exposed person, that's his status, we had to wait to understand what the bank's regulations were with regards to their concerns about money laundering, because obviously the standards for PEP individuals is different. And when this news broke out, I was like, okay, well, yesterday when we found out that actually the reasons for this were based because of his views, I was like, this is more than scandalous because you've effectively unpersoned someone. I think this should go further in terms of just them issuing an apology. There has to be some sort of legislation behind it because in the 21st century, you cannot unbank someone.
No.
You can't function without a bank account.
The reality is you can, and that's the problem. And the wider issue here, and Coutts, I think, is a little bit of a special case, but the ones that we hear, certainly as financial journalists, are people are left without their bank account for no reason. They're given no explanation. And when you ask for an explanation, they say, oh, we can't tell you because there's an ongoing investigation or whatever.
Yeah, the problem is that it could happen to you, and that's why Nigel Farage has this message for you. Refinitiv
are now going to work with banks so they'll be able to check your social media posts. What has happened to me can very soon happen to you. And if it does, we start to move towards a China-style social credit system where our freedoms are gone, our liberty is gone, our ability to exist as ordinary human beings is gone unless we obey the accepted wisdom of the day.
And that's the problem. And that's where the BBC problem comes in as well, because the BBC, like a proper journalistic organisation should have asked Coutts for some kind of, absolute proof that Nigel Farage's bank account was not up to standard because he didn't have enough money, right? And instead, they just printed it.
Well, the other thing is, of course, I don't give a hoot about Coutts. I mean, I was never ever going to be banking at Coutts or anything like that. But what I do care about is I care about individuals being able to do exactly what they want to do.
Right.
And immediately, you notice, of course, the BBC gave out all the disinformation about the whole story.
Right.
It was all over the place about... I mean, look at that John Sopel.
Yeah.
Who no
what
longer
a plank
works.
he is.
He
hasn't made it onto planking yet, but he's working his way up.
He's tweeting about Farage as if Farage sort of can't actually bank with who he wants, with the money he's got or hasn't got at the time, with everything else involved. It's an absolute nonsense.
You can't bank with who you want.
Yeah, but we're not going to keep... This is not a debate that we're going to have because we've got time. So we're going to move on. Otherwise, we'll be here all night.
I know.
Grant Shapps is your nominee.
Yes. I mean, I know you confidently said you were going to win, but everyone hates Grant Shapps. At the moment, anyway.
What about Mrs. Shapps?
Well, I'm sure she loves him.
Yeah.
But she has no choice. She's legally bound to him.
Right.
Anyway, so Grant Shapps, I cannot believe this man is a Conservative because this week he got together the executives of Tesco and Lidl and Aldi and all these huge retailers to have a go at them for functioning like businesses and having the audacity to make a profit, saying that these people, these supermarkets were ripping off customers because some of them were charging 6p more than others for fuel.
Yeah.
Forgetting the fact that most of what we pay at the pump, between 80 to 90% of it, is actually in tax.
Right.
So I don't
Goes
know
to
where.
the government.
But the bigger issue here is it just shows that he's a bit of an incompetent because really the conversation should be about energy security in this country and why many countries in Europe have I think 30 to 40% of their annual consumption in storage and we have less than 2%. Right. Or the fact
we don't have any storage.
We get more than 42% of our gas from Norway. Last summer when the oil and gas strike workers wanted to strike, that could have severely impacted the UK. No one is having that conversation. No. Instead of talking about, storage infrastructure and how to boost, energy security in this country, you're having a go at very busy executives for having the audacity to function like businesses. Yeah. And I'm so embarrassed. I can't even, beggars belief. But the reality is you are what you do, not what you say. Right. And as much as this government wants to pontificate that they're Conservatives and they're pro-business and they're pro-growth, really there's very little evidence to show for it. I'm hugely disappointed.
No. And when you say that you think he might be a bit of an incompetent, have a look at this when he was talking about rail travel.
Why not take a trip to Edinburgh to take in the sweeping views from Arthur's Seat? Or if it's sea and sand that you want, well, head to Cornwall with its stretches of beautiful sand and crashing waves.
How long ago was that?
Wow. I mean, you do have to wonder. That's almost as bad as those old let the train take the strain adverts. But of course, he's now advertising pretty much a service that doesn't exist. Well, the trains, which don't really run anywhere. He once said to me when I was interviewing him, don't you want to be the world's leader in onshore wind? And I went, not really.
Not really.
No, and he was so shocked by this because clearly nobody had ever said that. He didn't really know what to say. He just kind of looked at me.
How can he be that out of touch?
I know.
I mean, it's just unbelievable.
Yeah. And also,
as Esther says,
the huge bulk of wasted money from taxpayers is used by the government. So never mind telling the supermarkets. I mean, I think the supermarkets are slightly taking the mickey out of the customers from time to time.
But that's
their job.
Their business. This
and
is
if
the
you
point.
don't want to buy the
charities.
petrol from there, buy it from somewhere else.
So this is the point, and you send a very wrong message, because on the one hand we're celebrating this, battery company that's going to, I think, Somerset.
Oh yeah, Jaguar Land Rover.
Exactly. But on the other hand, you're saying, oh, don't make too much money, or we may need a windfall tax on supermarkets. I mean, it's just ludicrous.
Here's 500 million. Why don't you put the factory over there?
Well, exactly.
It's our money they're spending.
One of the big problems with all of this, though, and it's the problem that I think you can go wherever you want to get the cost of your fuel. My little car, which is just 500cc, I can fit it up for 40 quid
Very
and
nice.
it goes for hundreds of miles. So I'm laughing. But here is the rub and the problem. If you've got the sort of idiot that you've got who runs London at the moment as the mayor, he would probably quite like to make sure that people don't start looking for petrol off from so-and-so and yet being part of the bigger gang and everything. It is every individual's right. Lidl have been great. I don't know that they do too much on the forecourt front. Morrison's used to give you money off with their card. They then stopped that for a long time. They brought it back. I use independent people, whether they're more expensive or not, in the small towns and cities that I drive around and fill up in, because they matter to the local community. They're doing what they want, and there is no nonsense with driving and filling up real fuel in your car.
Yeah, I think that's
I don't
fair
really
enough.
understand why the government has to get involved in this anyway. Let the market play out, and
Because
we're seeing it
they
anyway.
want
Because
everything.
Lidl and Aldi are beating the supermarkets, and if you are going to pump up your prices really high during a cost of living crisis, when food inflation is 15% at the moment, people will go elsewhere, and they are going elsewhere. So
Isn't it
I don't know why the
audacity?
government needs to get involved in that.
It's the audacity. I mean, what's next? The corner shop owner charges 19p more for bread, so you have to go and have a go at him. I mean, it's just the
it's the
principle.
nanny state. They've got the bit between their teeth and they think everybody wants to be told what to do. Well, I've got some news for you. We don't want to be told what to do. Mr. Saggers, who's your first nominee?
Just Stop Oil.
Quite right.
Okay, I have some stiff competition.
They've had a busy week, by the way.
Busy week. I can't move without hearing the latest nightmare. I'm even sitting in the green room here and Richard Tice comes in and he's all over the television, which I thought was rather good.
Yeah, we've got a bit of that, actually. Should we have a look?
Yeah,
we've got a bit of that. This is Richard Tice this week having a go at the Just Stop Oil Brigade.
I want to be encouraging
You actually say to the cops here?
I told the cops, can you do your job and arrest these people
You're lucky they didn't
and send
arrest
them to
you.
prison?
I'm surprised they didn't arrest you.
I was so tempted to sort of hoof these people off the side of the road, and I was about to do it. I thought, no, I'm going to get arrested myself, and then I'll get fired.
Sorry, what did the police say to you?
The police said, we're waiting for orders, Gov.
Right.
We're
That's what they always say.
I said, you don't need orders.
Surely we've now had the laws been changed.
I literally gave them the law in 1980 that deals with all this. Right. I know it's a bit sad, but actually the 1980s Highway Act, Part 9, Section 137, Clause 1.
Right.
You're not allowed to obstruct the highway.
Did they thank you for that?
He didn't actually. No, he said, can you let me do my job, Gov?
So the real problem with Just Stop Oil goes back to the likes of the Church of England, where now they play out Holy Communion on a Sunday morning in most of these churches to 10, 11 people if they're lucky. We've got the Archbishop of Canterbury, who's totally woke. He's asleep most of the time.
Yeah.
And I was a committed Christian for many years. I did the lot. In fact, ironically, I was even part of the liturgical committee that reshaped the language for the Series 3 Communion.
Blimey.
But that became a cult, and they're missing a cult now throughout the UK with this.
Yeah.
So Just Stop Oil is the latest cult to replace
this week
certain
they
things
were
within the church.
Yeah.
And they're no different.
No.
They're no different. In the end, all of these people that are today getting beaten up or walking slowly or painting themselves or painting everything else, whatever they do, they are, in the end, going to be left behind.
Yeah.
And there is one way to stop the real punishments. I saw them outside one of the governmental buildings spraying yellow paint again. At somebody's wedding. They're going to try and do it, obviously, at the Open Golf as well. I wouldn't be surprised this week. I have a way to sort this out.
Go on.
Do you remember the pedestal that there is in Trafalgar Square where they used to put the brilliant sculptures that people were allowed? I would now put...
Just the fourth plinth.
The fourth plinth.
Yeah.
I want to put a grilled box there, and I want to put 2 of the Just Stop Oil protesters who get arrested in there for 24 hours.
Good idea.
Like stocks.
Like the stocks.
That we can throw tomatoes.
Well, not necessarily rotten fruit. It could actually just be cold water. But everybody that goes by gets an opportunity to actually tell them what they want.
You know,
and the other
what
thing,
I think? I think they would love that.
They would. Well, they might love it. But the other thing is, at the same time as we're doing that, we would also be having a chain gang. A chain gang of the others. If you've got 10 of them crossing the road, I chain their ankles, wait for this, I take them to parts of our country here where there is waste, where it is downtrodden, where they can't get the councils to clear any of the mess, and I would have these people picking up the mess.
Marvellous.
What a great idea.
Let's have a look. Don't send them to jail, put them in chains.
You will have some support in your quest. I
mean, it's not. I don't mean it from the point of view of being horrible about anything.
No, of course not.
But it's a cult.
Yeah, all right.
Whatever we think, it's a cult.
Calm down. Listen, this guy will be in support of you. He's about the same age as you, but he's got a skateboard. Have a look.
Wow.
Skateboard ninja. Right. He's ancient, this guy. But he's got a skateboard. What's he doing?
Skateboard wars.
This is what's happening. The streets of London this week have been ridiculous. Because
there was a guy got thumped today.
There was a guy that got thumped,
But you know what? It's going to come to this.
But I'm afraid it's the police's blame.
I don't condone any of that at all, but this is what's going to happen.
The incident where the guy got thumped, there were no police. People were being held up in traffic. They're getting more frustrated. I've been saying for ages, somebody's going to get hurt. And today's finally happened.
And it's inevitable. If the police don't do the job that they're paid to do, don't be surprised if British citizens who are being obstructed take the law into their own hands. It's inevitable. Social unrest. This is the beginning.
Climate change is into its 9th cycle of coming out of an ice age.
Yeah.
There have been many extinctions. There will continue to be extinctions. There will continue to be migration. The only thing at the moment we need to migrate, as well as making sure the immigrants don't come in, is Just Stop Oil. They're rich benefactors who are standing back and playing a game with all of these people.
Absolutely
Let's get real.
To be fair, the skateboarder and Richard make a decent pair. Maybe you could take them on. You know, you're in your suit and tie, and the skateboarder with his, his kind of trendy-looking gear. Anyway, next one, Georgie?
Yes. I'm not quite so as irate about this one, but Commonwealth Games.
This is a good one, yeah.
Yeah, the Commonwealth Games. This is after the Premier of Victoria State, that was due to host it in 2026, has basically come out and said, I'm not spending that kind of money.
Not worth it.
They budgeted $2.5 billion.
Yeah.
It was looking at $6 to $7 billion. Now, you can argue, because of the way that they'd structured it, that maybe they'd overspent it. But look, no way can you justify taking that sort of money away, as the Premier pointed out, from hospitals, from schools, from all those sorts of things, for a 12-day competition that really no one watches anymore. I mean, the idea of the Games in itself, it started, I think, in 1930. It was called the Empire Games, to keep the colonies together. I mean, a load of them have become republics. A lot of them are chatting about it. Australia particularly has got a really touchy relationship with another country.
It's kind of what it's like. This is the Poundland Olympics.
Yeah, exactly. No one's turning up anymore. The last ones, nobody bothered going. Tom Daley, I don't think, went in protest over rules around homosexuality in a lot of the countries there. How many people put their hands up to host it this time round? None.
Well, guess what, though? Sadiq Khan wants to put it on in London.
Yeah. Well, it might.
He's very good at spending other people's money.
It will probably end up going to the UK, because it was supposed to go to Durban in 2022. Then they got it taken away from them, so it went to Birmingham. It's likely to go to Edinburgh.
If you can't fund it yourself,
it doesn't bring enough to the economy to justify taking it out of.
It's true.
As I said,
it's the gravy train.
It is.
It's the gravy train.
I've never had so much trouble with
the best sporting club in the world.
Would you shut up for a minute?
Oh,
I mean, this show is only an hour long. You're going to have to rein it in a bit. Coming up, we're going to talk about the weather, because it's been very, very hot, apparently, in Europe, but not as hot as they've been telling you it is. This is Plank of the Week. Welcome back to Plank of the Week. This is the place where we find out who has been the most plankish this week, and we've already got 4 pretty strong contenders for the panel. I'm going to now put my tuppence halfpenny worth in, and it's going to be what can only be described as the climate alarmists, the people who have been telling us all week that basically if you go anywhere near the southern Mediterranean, you may well melt because it's that hot. They've been telling us that it's going to be 48 degrees here, 56 degrees there. They actually came out and said that, you know, it was really, really hot in Death Valley. Well, you know, Death Valley, which is below sea level and in the sort of western deserts of America, has got the 4 highest temperatures on record ever, because it's always about 55 or 56 degrees there. And when you go there, you know how hot it's going to be. Similarly, people go to Sardinia and Italy and southern France and Spain and the Canary Islands and all of that, expecting to get a nice summer holiday. And so we have been checking it out, as you might expect here. The Plank of the Week research team have been looking up what BBC Weather have been saying. And it's not just the BBC, it's a lot of other meteorological areas as well. But BBC Weather put out a tweet this week in which they said Africa heat, and they had the huge red kind of colour of all of the nations. And they've got Morocco, 47, Algeria, 48, Tunisia, 49. And the tweet says, a heatwave will persist across northwest Africa this week and into next week for some. Temperatures will be into the high 40s over the next few days. The heat may intensify this weekend and into the start of next week in Tunisia, with temperatures potentially reaching 50 degrees. Now,
I would never expect that from someone near the Sahara.
It's not a lie to say that potentially it could be 50, but it's actually not 50. And we looked into the temperatures, and in Tangier, in that part of the world, it was actually 31. It was not 48.
I mean, how can they get it so wrong?
Well, they're obviously not getting it wrong. They're manipulating the figures. I mean, you on your show had a guy from Net Zero explaining how the Met Office have actually been tinkering around with the numbers.
They've been fiddling the figures for the central England temperature for hundreds of years. And in the last year, they've just fiddled the whole lot in order to make it look as though we're warming faster in the last 50 years.
Yeah. Well,
and now they're at it again.
And our researchers also found that in most of the reports of last week, many of them on site in places like Rome, you know, they'd suddenly go with a very solemn face, you know, people have been told to stay indoors until 6 o'clock. Yeah. And you go, well, that's why when you go to these places, there's hardly any locals out on the streets, you know.
It's a siesta.
And
there's
then,
a reason they have
I mean, you've spent time in these countries.
I've just come back from Florence when there was a red weather warning.
But then they sort of pan across, and there's some people sort of getting some water out of a fountain. There's a couple of people eating an ice cream. You know, in the south of France, they had people on a beach throwing a ball. You know, like,
sounds like they're having a nice time.
They're actually on holiday. Let's have a look at a BBC clip from this week.
This is Antibes in the south of France, where tourists are being warned to take special care in the extreme heat. In Greece, they've been dousing areas at risk of wildfires, with temperatures expected to hit 45. And they'll do anything to keep cool in Turin in Italy, one of 10 major cities issued with red alert warnings for severe heat.
Yeah, they'll do anything to keep cool by getting on a bicycle and getting all hot and sweaty.
So I sent out a tweet saying, anybody in Europe on holiday, could you let us know what it's like this week?
Yeah.
And I got hundreds of messages back saying, it's just another normal summer. Yeah. It's lovely. I'm out and about enjoying it.
Well, I've been picking up all of this.
It was hotter than last year.
On social media, you know, I've been picking up lots of people sending pictures. I'm in Greece having a lovely time. Nobody's talking about the weather. No. It's about 36, 37. You know, I've been on holiday in Turkey with my kids when it's been 38, 39 degrees. I used to live in New York when it was regularly, you know, 110, 115 degrees Fahrenheit every day for about a month.
Yeah. But a lot of this is total misinformation.
It is.
Because the BBC now basically thinks both its journalists and its weather people can just say what they like with opinion.
Right.
And it's not designed at people who are going abroad and to those that actually know what's going on in the world at the moment. This is designed for everybody who stays at home, because the scare tactics are here. When they find there's one fire that they've got right, they'll then scare everybody again in this country, because this is what the BBC are trying to do at the moment. I mean, they're trying to take complete control.
Yes, a brush fire or a bushfire, whatever you want to call it, is a problem. They've been having these for ages and ages and ages. The hottest time, the hottest temperature ever recorded on planet Earth was in Death Valley, but in 1913.
The last time I think I was on this programme, I wanted a lot of the weather sacked off because it is absolute myth
Garbage.
that all of these different companies now have to tell us about the weather. The BBC want it because they need it for the figures in the different regions.
Yeah.
So they'll scare and they'll say, oh, now you've got to watch every programme back on the BBC again.
And everything's red as well.
And everything now is red. Everything is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And what will happen with all of this, as happened, I'm afraid to say, in the East Midlands, certain events were cancelled on Saturday. Cancelled.
Yeah.
Cancelled from the real public who were putting together fates and other things.
Right.
Cancelled.
Why?
Because the BBC were basically telling us untruths about the state of the weather with this. We were going to get a wind that was going to blow us all out of the country.
Oh, yeah, they were going to have to cancel Wimbledon, weren't
They cancelled
That
it.
didn't happen.
But it's deliberate.
Yeah.
This is
Of course it
deliberate
is.
scaremongering and misinformation. I actually call it for what it is, which is lying. And it's all part of their climate agenda. And it's unbelievable.
Yeah, it is.
It really is.
Absolutely right. I mean,
if
one
they-
BBC report I heard this week, they said, this time last... They went straight to the weather, but the report actually started with, this time last year, it was 41 degrees in London. And you go, well, that's not the weather. And then they went, actually, in some parts of the country, this week, it's 11. 11!
I actually was working for the BBC the last time they really got things wrong. Well, they get it wrong all the time.
Yeah.
I was doing the breakfast show on BBC Radio Cambridgeshire the morning after Michael Fish had said,
Oh, yeah.
what hurricane?
I remember that.
Remember
that
that?
was a great one, yeah.
Yeah,
Horrendous.
that's the sort of
October
thing they
87.
do.
Yeah.
They don't get these things right anymore.
No, they haven't
Been
got it
around a
right
long
for a while.
time, Saggers, haven't you?
I'm afraid I have.
Yeah.
Which
Anyway,
catches a few people like
we
Gary
must crack
Lineker
on,
out.
Saggers. What would you like to say for your second nomination?
My second nomination was something I was staying at a Premier Inn a few days ago.
I find that hard to believe.
No, are you accusing me of fibbing?
Well,
I was
no,
staying
but
at a
I'm just
Premier
wondering
Inn.
why you
Generally,
were
the
staying at
service is
Premier
great, but I was slightly troubled as I arrived to see a sign on the door that I think we'll see, where it said that they were number one in the hospitality index.
Yes.
With that organisation Stonewall.
Stonewall, yeah.
And this was in July.
Did they give a
and
discount
the
for
Pride
Coots
month?
bankers to stay?
I don't know, maybe, but
You know.
I haven't got a Coots account. But so it was in July, but they still had the Pride flag there.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, what's going on here?
Right.
I mean, why do we need this?
There it is.
And you just think, I just felt, I just want a decent bed, a quiet night, and to wake up happily and safely in the morning.
Right.
I don't need a rainbow telling me.
I'm told they've also changed their logo for Pride Month to Premier Out, as opposed to Premier In. There it is. I mean, it's a bit of a mad thing going on, isn't it? I mean, I generally have a rule that I don't stay in any hotel that has a soap dispenser on the wall. It's just not for me, I'm afraid. That's my rule. But I presume they had that, did they? The soap
Well, they do, but you see, I work on the principle, if you look after the pennies, the pounds look after themselves.
Yeah,
right?
and that's played out well for you.
It has, actually, I know.
But, it's not the only thing, is it? Because we've seen over the course of the last month or so, and Pride Month is now over, as far as I know. It was June. Yeah. A lot of people were moaning, why do we only have Veterans Day, but we have Pride Month? But for a long time, we saw all of these different companies changing into some kind of, Pride logo, putting the rainbow colours somewhere. There is now, apparently, even a 50p piece.
So this is unbelievable.
Which has just been minted, right?
This has just been quietly sort of released
I think
into
we
the
can
market.
see it in a minute.
But there is a 50p piece, and on the back of it, it's got a number of different rainbows, and imprinted on the 50p, it says Pride.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if this is a coin for a month, or whether actually this is a coin for the next 30 or 40 years. But what's quite clear...
It won't be worth much in about 40 years.
Well, that's also true. But the Bank of England, whose staff have just been given £25 million in bonuses for failing to control inflation, I think they've been given those bonuses because they printed a lovely coin.
Yes.
A nice 50p coin
And
with
also,
Pride
let's
on
not
it.
forget, they've got those nice gender-neutral toilets on the 7th floor of the Bank of England.
They have indeed.
We found that out the other week.
I collect coins.
Do you?
And they've been printing ridiculous 50p coins. You can go into the post office and buy the mint ones and everything like this. None of them will ever be worth a single thing.
No.
It is just classic.
Vanity project, isn't it?
Coining it.
But
That's
it's our
all they're all
cash,
doing.
It's our money that they're wasting.
Yeah, of course it is.
It's just
I
outrageous.
mean, Premier Inn, I suppose, can do whatever they like.
Of course they can.
You would like to think the Royal Mint wouldn't do what we don't want them to do. But anyway.
But given that everybody knows that Stonewall, frankly, I mean, it's sort of permeated through so many institutions and big companies.
They got their hooks in everywhere.
They have. But actually, they've been discredited everywhere. I was just amazed that Premier Inn still think it's appropriate to include their name.
I know. Esther, time for your next one.
My next one is very strange.
It's weird.
And it's American, obviously, and I never thought I'd actually nominate the Democrats in their entirety.
Right.
But they have a strange video warning voters that Republicans want to take away their condoms. You have to see it to believe
Interesting
it.
strategy.
Yes.
What's that got to do with Joe Biden?
Well, apparently, you have fundamentalist Christians in the Republican Party that are effectively trying to jeopardize people's access to
Oh, they don't like
reproductive
contraception.
healthcare. Exactly.
We
So you
shouldn't have any
literally have, I
contraception.
kid you not, in this video, you have a couple in bed
Yeah.
about to get their freak on. And
As
you
they-
have
as they say,
what looks like a
in
Republican
Oklahoma.
because he looks like stuffy and all the words that comes out of his mouth
Right.
is just no, 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 and no. And they're like, oh, be careful because they want to take away your condoms at the next general election. You have to see it.
All right, we've got to see it. Let's have a look.
Do you have a condom?
Sorry, you can't use those.
What are you talking about? Who are you?
I'm your Republican congressman. Now that we're in charge, we're banning birth control.
This is our decision, not yours. Get out of our bedroom.
I won the last election. I'm not going anywhere. I'm just gonna watch and make sure you don't do anything.
I think it's quite good.
I'm actually.
I mean, it's an advert. It's got us.
I think it's effective in the sense that we're
Yeah.
talking about it. I think what it's not effective is you're basically satirizing what they would hope would be a serious issue. If you want to be taken seriously about the fight for sort of
Are you sure though that
reproductive
they're not
rights-
actually wrong here? That the Republicans are not actually saying you can't use condoms, are they?
Well, no,
Surely
there's
not.
also that. Because
Surely not.
The thing is, the percentage of the population that genuinely believe that contraception and all those things are ills, I can't imagine is more than 10%.
No.
And then how much of that whittles down into Congress and how much significant control and power
Right.
do they have? I mean, if they want to go down the abortion debate, that's completely different. But this is quite ludicrous.
Yeah.
And also, I'm not a guy, but obviously I would find that girl annoying. The girl on top, it's like, do you have a condom? Like, she starts
Yeah.
irritating,
She
and
is
it's just like.
irritating.
I was
The
going
one
to give
thing
them
I'm
credit. I was going to give them credit for
Yeah.
great acting. I mean, I thought
Yeah.
the three of them were all,
So I'm looking forward to the next
I was
reform.
quite impressed.
I'm looking
Normally
forward to the
the-
next Reform UK campaign.
Yeah,
exactly.
You know what should be our ad? I mean,
Do you want to nick our bras?
The only thing missing from that was, here's Johnny.
Yeah,
God,
absolutely.
yeah.
The other thing that I'm surprised about is that they actually had a heterosexual couple
I know.
attempting to have sex. I
You
mean,
don't know
that's
if the
very
woman
unlike
was actually a
Democrats.
woman.
That.
Good point.
You know,
She might
surely,
have had something tucked in there.
do you think?
Yeah,
Bit of a
maybe.
non-binary moment.
No, oh God.
Blimey.
they're obviously
It's
not
getting
controlled
worse.
by Stonewall, otherwise.
No, obviously not. Anyway, that was an interesting section. Coming up, we're going to be talking about the BBC. We're going to be talking about another billionaire who's done something stupid, and also a council that have made a 94-year-old woman take her bin herself, walking to the dump. This is Plank of the Week. Welcome back to Plank of the Week. It is Friday night and it's the only place to be right here on TalkTV. We've got quite a long way through the show already, but we've still got a little ways to go. Mark Saggers is with us this week and you've got the BBC, Mark.
I certainly have, and this is a real problem as far as I'm concerned because they're just sucking the energy out of everybody here. So a friend of our family's, Sarah Moore, I will name her, has just moved back from Paris to this country and she made the decision to buy her first flat, which she has done. It's a lovely apartment. And she turned the key in the door after she'd secured this flat and owned something for the first time, opens the door, and on the mat was one letter. A letter threatening her by saying, "Dear occupier, we're the BBC, you have to watch it because we've already been notified by this house doesn't have anybody in it now with a licence and we're basically after you."
That's shocking,
It's
isn't it?
absolute. I mean, I feel quite sort of sad. It was really shocking for her. This was a moment, a proud moment, that, you can look around, I've done something here, I've got my... And what has she got on the floor? She's got the BBC already taking that mat from underneath her.
It's unbelievable, isn't it?
It's disgusting.
Because every time you buy anything that has
Do you know how much they use, the companies they use Capital?
It's millions, isn't it?
Still around.
It's millions.
How many millions do you think they spend on just getting people to enforce the licence fee?
I think it's about
Anybody
4 million,
idea?
isn't it? It's about
60 million.
60?
0?
60 million.
That is nice work if you can get it.
It's
Maybe we should pitch for the contract.
The whole thing is unbelievable. And we all know it's a spent force thing.
But it's not working because 500,000
It doesn't
have
work.
stopped paying it recently.
500,000 people
I had
stopped
one. I had one of those. There's a presumption of guilt. If I had a red
it makes
left,
you feel-
red, you have to contact them to say that you're not that you don't need to pay it.
Yeah.
It's a red letter. We know that someone in this block hasn't paid or whatever. We've got our eye on you.
Yeah.
It's quite intimidating. Like, I don't mind. I mean,
Well, you're used to getting threatening letters.
Well, indeed. But as a vulnerable person...
You're right there.
Sorry. But, the thing is as well, you buy anything...
We've got our eye on you.
But if you buy anything which is vaguely connected to a television, I mean, I haven't done it for a while, but if you buy like a Freeview box or you buy, some kind of DVD player, you get another letter saying, have you got a TV licence? And you're going, yeah, of course I have. Or, of course I haven't. But, what's it got to do with you?
It's a sign of desperation, isn't it? They know that actually they're on the slippery slope. The licence fee is on the way out. And, frankly, we need it gone. We've got to defund the BBC. They've got to stand up to commercial competition. They've got some great products.
Let's not forget, before the Hugh Edwards scandal, they were going to put it up. Yeah. They wanted to actually increase it. But we found in the archives a bit of a warning video from the BBC of old. Have a look at this.
Yes, there's a TV set on number 5. It's in the front room. And they're watching Columbo.
If you don't have a TV licence, it won't take us long to find you.
I mean, these are the people...
Which is a lie. You cannot know that.
They used to pretend... I remember when these vans used to drive around and they had that weird sort of coat hanger thing going around the top. There was obviously somebody underneath, winding it around. And you'd go, can they really tell if you've got a television? And as kids, you used to go, oh, yeah, absolutely.
I think it tells you all you need to know that they've
been lying since then.
They've been lying since then, and they actually outsource the collecting because they'd be so useless at it.
I think the problem with the BBC is they've not made a good enough case for themselves in the sense that, look, I subscribe to other things. I subscribe to Amazon Prime, Netflix, and obviously in the day and age that we live in now, or anytime really, you have to make a good case to people. There are people that actually genuinely love the BBC. Yeah. They're patriots. They believe that society derives benefit from it. But I feel like these tactics really sours the public mood, because if right from the get-go, when you get into your new flat, you have this red letter saying we're watching all of that. Maybe that person might have actually been fond of the BBC and might have, used the service.
What everybody has said here, and I think, and Richard made a great point on this as well, is it is time now for us to decide what we want to watch to pay for on the BBC. Exactly. Not just to give them a blank cheque to spend our money on whatever they want. Those days have gone completely.
I like the BBC. I like the original principles it had. It was supposed to be there to fill in the areas that were not, that couldn't be commercialised and make lots of money.
Broadcast.
So how do you justify something like Radio 1?
Right.
There is plenty in the commercial market.
Or
Strictly. Or Gary Lineker. Or all of these things that are very expensive. They should be bringing through new talent and doing exactly what they did. And they're not doing that. So if you can't justify, exactly to your point, if you can't justify your case, I'm afraid they are going to lose it.
But Gary's special, isn't he, Georgie?
He is special.
Dear Gary?
Gary Lineker.
I mean, he's special.
Oh, he really is.
He must get me on
Gary. He's very special because he gets so much more money.
Don't get me on Gary Lineker.
But I've got even more better news. So I've got another even more scary ad here, an old one.
You haven't been listening, Dave. I asked you very politely. I asked you to get me a license. But you wouldn't.
I forgot.
And that's sad, Dave, because it's not up to me anymore. It's up to them.
Them?
And when they come calling, it won't be, do the decent thing, Dave. It'll be, where's your license, Mr. Brady?
Apparently there's a whole stack of these ads. I don't remember that.
Do you know how the BBC?
I mean, this gives you great insight though into the people that run this organisation.
It really does.
How they think that they're invincible, and why when all of the nonsense started with Hugh Edwards, all of these people who work only ever at the BBC, and 40 years in one company, and what really, can't be healthy.
And the other annoying part of this, that Sarah's a bright girl, so she saw it as well, is that they then say, of course, you can go to prison. You only go to prison if you don't pay through the court the fine. So the BBC actually has washed their hands of that side of things as well. They just think they're this great organisation that we all truly love in the way that our parents and grandparents did, and we all huddle round the telly to watch the Generation Game or whatever else. It's gone!
If they've got an archive of those sort of, terrifying reminders, you could turn that into a comedy series.
Yeah.
It's like,
I think we might do that.
That's an entertainment show in itself.
Absolutely right.
Nothing about a laugh for me from the BBC at the moment.
Never mind. Georgie, who's your final nominee?
a perennial plank, I think.
Yes.
I think now is a good time.
He got a mention last week, but he hasn't been nominated for a while.
This week, Twitter announced, or he announced, that Twitter had a 50% drop in ad revenue since he'd arrived, negative cash flow. He basically overpaid $44 billion for a company and has pretty much trashed it. I mean, he's done the unbelievable thing, and that's not to make a toxic cesspit even more toxic, which is what's happened with Twitter.
We are talking, of course, about Elon Musk.
Oh, Elon Musk, absolutely. Sorry. He's made Mark Zuckerberg look like the saviour of the internet, which is an extraordinary
He's made Mark
feat.
Zuckerberg look normal, which is quite
absolutely
weird.
extraordinary. So he's sacked half the staff. He's now also invited...
Yeah, but they were very woke, so that was a good thing.
I'm sorry?
They were very woke, so that was a good thing.
I mean, you still think that Twitter doesn't have that element to it? Now it's just an absolute...
It's just half woke.
Well, no, it's vigilante woke almost. It's absolutely torrid.
It's kind of
the
Wild West now, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've seen explicit porn on there. I mean, it's an absolute torrid place to be. So
But
no
people are
one's
still
to blame
getting
for
cancelled.
himself.
People are still getting cancelled for doing things which might otherwise have been considered to be right-wing. And they're still getting cancelled. So that hasn't
The place is a complete mess. It's not worth anything what it was. People don't use it as much as they used to. I mean, don't get me wrong, it was horrible at times beforehand.
I mean, to be honest, I've always thought it was horrible.
But it was, it was a good place for journalists and creatives. And then he took away the blue tick, which means, there's 50 Hillary Clintons, you don't know which one you're following, or anyone with a public figure, you've no idea who you're following.
Don't bother following Hillary Clinton, by the way.
No, absolutely. And then now he keeps sort of trying to invite Mark Zuckerberg for a penis competition, who's got the biggest... I mean, it's just an absolute... I don't understand what he's doing. It's like he sees himself as the Iron Man kind of Tony Stark figure. It's not even close.
Let's have this discussion in a couple of years' time. I've just got a hunch he should never be underestimated.
No, I think that's probably right.
And so, as you say, it's sort of going through a bad period now, but it'll be interesting to see whether
it might be millions and a halo effect
it might
can
be
do a lot for you.
But it also might mean...
That's why people think that he's this incredible... Because he's,
I mean, he's a very smart guy. There's no doubt about that. He's made an awful lot of money. The question is, in 2 years' time, what will social media look like? Because it could be completely different.
He's made a lot of money, but there's also a concern, and there's a concern, Elizabeth Warren, I think, is very concerned about this, and anyone who's got money
about Elizabeth
in
Warren.
Tesla...
I don't think she should be anywhere near politics.
OK, fair dues. But anyone who's got shares in Tesla at the minute, I mean, he's an almost toxic brand for it. I mean, if Twitter, they've got a debt pile, if he needs to take money from Tesla, investors will be concerned. Look, I'm not saying that that's the case, right? I'm absolutely not saying that's the case. But what I'm saying is this idea that he's this kind of, but he's really smart.
But he is.
He's got all this money. How are you that smart when you spend £44 billion on something that now is worth...
Because he's an entrepreneur, and entrepreneurs, they take risks, and some work and some don't. I'm a Tesla owner, so I'm a bit passionate. It's a very good question. But, you have to take risks, you have to try things, some work, some don't, and let's see where it goes.
Well, do you know, I heard Nick Clegg giving an interview earlier this week to the BBC, in which he basically declared that Mark Zuckerberg's artificial intelligence bots, which everybody's so worried about, aren't actually very bright. So there you go. So, I mean, this guy's making millions as well. So maybe we're the idiots. Maybe we're all the planks, and Elon Musk actually should be running this show. Anyway, coming up, we're going to be talking about a council that hasn't done very well. You know what I'm talking about. This is Plank of the Week. Welcome back to Plank of the Week. Coming up after this show, Nadine Dorries live on a Friday night. What more could you want? But we have still got one more plank to go. And I'm delighted to say it is one of the local councils, Canterbury City Council. The Archbishop of Canterbury could get involved in this, but he's not involved in this. There's a 94-year-old woman called Nan Miller, who got so fed up with her bins not being collected that she told the council if they didn't come and collect her bins, she would take them herself to the actual dump. Let's have a look at what she did. Two miles she took it to the dump. And why? Because there's a strike, of course. And Canterbury City Council have failed to sort the strike out. Industrial action has meant that she was waiting for 3 weeks for her garden waste to be taken away, and she just got fed up because if you've got, what it's like, if you've got a bin outside your house for that length of time, no matter what's in it, something's going to start going a bit rotten. And basically, she walked to the Vauxhall Road Recycling Centre, which is practically 2 miles away, and was luckily picked up by somebody on the way back who spotted her and said, I'll give you a lift back. But what sort of councils are we having?
Well, I'll tell you exactly what it is.
You know.
The Nanny State does not care about the state of our nannies.
No, that's a very good one.
How disgusting.
Well, she's even older than the nanny. This is the way you'll know about this. It's a waste contractor because, of course, they've all outsourced it all, right? So there's no more bin men that actually work for the council. It's the GMB Union that have caused the strike, right? Because they say that they've already rejected 3 pay offers and they've been on strike now for ages. There's a company called Kanenko, which is the waste contractor, which is owned by Canterbury City Council. But why do they own a separate company and then somehow outsource the work to that company? Why can't Canterbury just employ the bin men? Why can't they?
Well, or outsource it to a company that's going to do the job. I mean, they're in breach of contract. If they're not collecting the bins, they're in breach. Get someone else.
But this 94-year-old Nan, I'll tell you what, she is the sort of person that made this country, right? She's had 2 cardiac arrests, right? She walks around as much as she can. She says she's a former French interpreter. You know, lives on her own in Canterbury. I mean, this woman should get some kind of medal.
A real person.
Absolutely right.
You know, best of British and all that.
She is the best of British, the heart of British. Is what makes you proud to be British.
Yeah, and she speaks French as well. So if any of the French turn up in Canterbury, she can tell them where to go. Which is, I mean, obviously what you want, isn't it? But it is extraordinary, isn't it, that the councils in this... I mean, I speak to so many people who tell me that at the moment, particularly, recycling places have been done away with. They're starting to give you a fine if you put the recycling in the wrong bin. You know, I got a letter from somebody in Devon today, actually, saying that, you know, basically they've now got sort of recycling police who pitch up and watch you. And if you
do know now that your postcode, if you go to the wrong recycling dump, they just don't allow you in anymore.
No, or they fine you for going and dumping stuff there when you shouldn't have done it.
Oh, it's another sign of broken Britain, isn't it? When a 95-year-old Nan has to walk her own rubbish bin to the dump because the council have failed to collect it. I mean, what works in this country?
Well, nothing really. I mean, although the only thing that does work, I think we could agree on, is the speeding cameras, because they work absolutely fine.
Absolutely.
And if you haven't had a speeding fine in the last month, you've obviously not been driving around much, because so many people are getting them. Have you had one?
Yeah, I had one, and it was an unmarked Northamptonshire.
Oh yeah.
Right. In an area that they caught us, I was doing 34 in a 30.
Yeah.
Although there is some funny news about that, actually. Some of these speeding cameras, these sort of ULEZ-type cameras that take pictures of you, Big Brother's watching, they're going walkabouts.
Yeah, people are taking them.
They're disappearing.
People are not
or
happy.
The odd Waitrose bag
people
appears on the top.
Now, listen, this has been a very interesting episode of Plank of the Week, and I have to say there are several contenders. But there can only be one winner, and as always, I have to award it. And this week, I'm not going to award it to myself. I normally do. Not just because it's me, but normally because it's the best one. But I'm going to have to say, Richard Tice and Coots Bank. It has to be Coots Bank, does it not? Planks of the week. Absolutely trying to lose business. You know, losing shareholders, losing customers. I mean, what the hell do they think they're doing? You know, they're supposed to be a bank. They're more woke than Stonewall. Absolutely unbelievable. So congratulations. Plank of the week goes to Coots Bank. Nigel Farage should open an account somewhere else. Thank you to all of you. Richard, Esther, Mark, Georgie. We'll be seeing you next week, of course. Coming up next, it's Friday Night with the Dean.